YouTube, Sister Danger here. The title of today's episode is 2, 3, and 4 wrongs do not make a right. Now, I have a story that I want to share with you guys today that I heard through the grapevine, and this story was so ripe that I decided to go and actually read it for myself. I am not a particularly good artist like Sugar Tits or anything, so I am just going to have to ask you to bear with me through my crude chalk drawings as I tell you the story today of a bunch of grapes. Once upon a time, there was a cluster of friends, and they all hung out together like grapes. They were all excited about a new movie, and everyone was talking about it over on Juicy Grape's Vine. Every grape on Juicy Grape's Vine was excited about the movie. They thought it was so fresh and totally ripe. It was funny and well done, except one grape. Sour Grape thought the movie was a steaming pile of grape shit, an unwanted, flat rehash, the shitty-ass grappa of the fine wine industry. And Sour Grape said so with all the eloquence of a pro-grappler. Well, Sour Grape's opinionated tactlessness did not sit well with the bunch. They said things like, "Hey, relax, Sour Grapes. No need to rain on our parade. Besides, we don't really appreciate your coarse reaction." To which Sour Grape replied, "Well, hey, here's a thought. If you don't like what I have to say, ignore it. I'm just sharing my opinion like the rest of the bunch." Now, while this tit for tat is going on, Snarky Grape is up there in the peanut gallery, peeling out personally derogatory remarks about Sour Grape. "Careful, everyone. Sour Grape is just about to burst and ruin the whole casket." Juicy Grape finally intervened and said, "Hey, Sour Grape, it's my vine, and I'd really appreciate it if we could just leave off with the unpopular opinions." And Sour Grape replied, "Since it's your vine, Juicy Grape, and you asked, I'll go ahead and withdraw. Sorry, Juicy Grape." But Snarky Grape just couldn't leave well enough alone and had to squeeze in one last zinger. "Remember, gang, Sour Grape is just a big grape on the vine, a concord whose opinion it's more important we listen to since it's more valid than yours by virtue of being a concord." And, as you might imagine, Sour Grape came completely unjuiced. "Fuck you, you fucking fruit roll-up. You don't know me. You're just a dried-up concord-hating raisin." The bunch of grapes was totally taken aback. Like, dude, Sour Grape, it is absolutely unacceptable to call Snarky Grape a concord-hating raisin. All the while, Snarky Grape continued peeling off zingers from up there in that peanut gallery. And Sour Grape said, "Well, wait a minute. Snarky Grape was calling me Big Grape on the Vine and insulting me for being a concord." What happened next was a complete, you guessed it, clusterfuck. The grapes completely bunched up and socially gang-graped Sour Grape without batting so much as a leaf at Snarky Grape's sidevine inflammatory insults, laughing all the while. Instead of saying, "Hey, enough is enough," the cluster all joined in, and they began mocking Sour Grape by saying Sour Grape was ignorant and dumb and couldn't have had a properly formed opinion. They called Sour Grape a raisin hater and threatening. One grape suggested that Sour Grape be pruned and asked where the nearest shear store was. Sour Grape was demonized and ostracized. One by one, the grapes kicked Sour Grape off the vine. And as if that wasn't enough, Juicy Grape, to whom the original apologies had been made, Juicy Grape played the victim card to the hilt and declared the triggering. Sour Grape had set off Juicy Grape's anxiety and therefore needed to be banned from the venue that Juicy Grape was about to show up to. Everyone rallied to protect Juicy Grape's supposedly endangered safety, even though Sour Grape had never made a single threat. So remember, folks, the moral of the story today is public opinion is like grapes. Any bunch can make wine. That's why wine is cheap. I'd like to say, very bluntly put, that I don't particularly agree with the way that Sour Grape responded to Snarky Grape. It was belligerent and offensive. What I don't agree with more, though, is what Snarky Grape did, and the fact that everybody seems to just want to turn a blind eye to that, and further gives their implicit support to Snarky Grape's actions by jumping on the hate wagon for Sour Grape. While I don't condone sour grape's reaction to snarky grape, the difference between these two sets of actions is rather crucial. Sour grape's original crime, if you will, is that sour grapes is belligerent and crude, not very well spoken, and jumped into a conversation in order to very poorly express an opinion of dislike about a thing. Sour grape didn't call anybody names, wasn't being personally insulting. Sour grape had an opinion that was in direct controversy to the opinion of all the other grapes. Sour grape clashed abrasively with some of the other participants, some of the other grapes in the conversation, but sour grape didn't ever engage in direct pejorative against the other grapes, unlike the actions of snarky grape. Snarky grape engaged in a very intentional and malicious act in striking up personal insult and pejorative against sour grape. Sour grape's fault is not being very eloquent. Snarky grape's fault is the purposeful engineering of a situation in order to gangpile sour grape. And as a result, sour grape's response to that can be classified as basically self-defense, because up until that point, sour grape had not personally gone out and started insulting the other grapes. Sour grape only was insulting the movie itself. But the fallout that continued to occur after sour grape had been cut from the vine. And what happened was snarky grape continued egging on the insulting and the mockery of sour grape. And people were encouraged to make derogatory and arguably even threatening comments, asking where the nearest shear store is so as to prune sour grape. It's a pretty violent type of a comment to make. And then to purposefully pick up the victim ball and run for the ultimate goal of getting this person banned from going to public places over no actual threats, anxiety. All of these actions are calculated actions. They did not take place in the flow and current of a conversation. They took place over several days and continued to take place as people had time to think about this and digest this and plot out what their next moves were going to be. And nobody had a problem with the fact that this was purposefully instigated. Everybody was okay with that. Now, I agree that coming into a group conversation where everybody's talking about how they love football and going off about how football is an abomination because it's a blight against vegans everywhere is pretty tactless and ostensibly could even be considered rude. But what it isn't is a purposeful attack against the other people in that conversation. It's just a ham-handed expression of one's own opinion. That said, I just wanted to wrap this up by saying, I don't agree with what sour grape did in response to snarky grape. But even more than I don't agree with that, I really don't agree with everybody thinking that it's okay for sour grape to have been purposefully instigated and then to have snarky grape hide behind, again, the shield of popular opinion while everybody gangs up and dogpiles onto sour grape. It reminds me of a quote by Nietzsche that goes like this: "And when they call themselves the good and the just, remember that they would be Pharisees if only they had power." Have a good night, everybody. I'm going to Olive Garden to have some wine.